Olá, sejam todos bem-vindos.
Hi, welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you today, this final Talking Business for 2022 Enterprise Tech Innovation. We are gonna get in depth in the topic of corporate technology and international ones, and we have three very important guests to share their perspectives and different point of views. I'm Jason Diane, the Vice President of the Uninter Global Hub, and my mission is to get more of the word to Uninter and more of Uninter to the world. I'm going to briefly discuss the format of the event, and then we're going to go over to our speakers. You're going to have one-on-one conversations, with each one of our three guests. Then you're going to have a 20-minute round table and Q&A from you, from the audience. So please feel free to write your questions in our chat box. We are gonna follow all their questions, but you're only gonna enter at the end. So we know that some of you know what enterprise tech means, but it's a software and hardware category for large companies to optimize workflow, strengthen communication, and how to drive innovation. Our goals with this event is to understand what are the technologies, the most important ones. We have many, but what are the most important ones for large companies? And discuss how culture borders have an impact in the use and adoption of these technologies in multinational companies. I explore some of the differences between countries and sectors, and to have this interactive conversation at the end. So with that, I'm going to allow our guests to introduce themselves. But before everything, I'd like to thank Uninter directors and our staff from the Global Hub team, and mainly the presence of all of you who are here with us today. So now I'm going to switch into English. I'm American, and you're going to have our first guest, Ivanise Gomez. She's Brazilian, but she lives in Brazil. So she's going to have to make an effort, and now we'll have time to rest. And then we're going to switch back to Portuguese for the following guests.
It is a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm just going to jump right in after saying briefly to the audience that Ivanise is a wonderful IT executive. She has over 20 years of experience, both in Brazil and in recent years in the US. She's based outside of Pittsburgh in the Northeast of the US and worked for 15 years at Eaton, a multinational focused on intelligent power management. She's managed IT budgets of $10 million plus for companies with revenues of which means more than $1 billion. So it is a great pleasure to have you with us. And Ivanise, if you could just start us off by giving us 2 to 3 minutes on who you are and a little bit about your career and trajectory, that would be great.
Okay, can you hear me well? Hey, everyone. So about my career, I started my career as a developer, developed in C++, Java, all these very basic languages I really enjoy developing. I moved them to work as a leader of my team. I say that I'm a for IT, very unusual person. I'm more like a creative, marketing-like person in IT, which helped me to develop my career around managing people and managing customers, projects, and then programs and portfolios. And the last 10 years of my career, I worked as a business relationship manager, which is a role that not everyone is familiar with, but it's about being a bridge between the business and IT. So my work is to help executives from the business standpoint to deploy and leverage technology to get better results in the business without having to know in depth what technology is about and how to use it. So I am an advisor at the strategic level, building roadmaps and helping them to invest the money. So that's the point, how to better invest the money from IT in your business in a way that you get excellent results. This has been what I've been doing my last 10 years. And in addition, I would say, because we are going to talk a little bit about skills and career, 20% of my time I've been dedicating in the last 10 years as well in diversity and inclusion activities, helping women to succeed in leadership careers. So young women or women that are starting as managers, and people of color as well. Here in the US, that is a very strong movement. So I've been working in these areas because I really, I think that if you are in a position that you can help others, you should do it as part of your job. And this is what I've been doing so far.
Excellent. So one of the things that you touched on, which is interesting, and I know that it's interesting to our audience because we do some polling of participants, and they really value the perspective of people who both understand Brazil very well, and they've gone somewhere else and have that experience outside, but they don't just understand the foreign country, because understanding the context is really important and understanding that perspective. So I thought of that just because you brought up the question of diversity, equity, inclusion. And I know that there are differences in how, there are similar struggles and challenges, but there are differences in implementation. So you worked at Eaton, a large company in both Brazil and in the US. And I'm curious, what are the primary differences in people, in process, in culture that you experienced?
Okay, so I thought about a few differences, and I would start with one that is very, people will find probably interesting, that is the communication style. I am a very direct and result-oriented person, or woman, I would say, and this is not so well perceived in Latin America. So before coming to the US, I was the Latin America Business Relationship Manager, and I had issues with being too direct. On the other hand, working for a multinational from the United States, people really valued that as a good quality. So I was more like people in the United States than people in my own region. So my peers and my bosses, let's say, here in the US, they really like my style because it's direct. But in Latin America, I struggled a little bit. I had to find out a middle way to go, meet people in the middle, because sometimes I had to work around it and not be so direct to better adapt to the Latin America style. So the same happened if we want to expand even more. I had people reporting to me from Germany and from India, for example, from Mexico, from Brazil. And the way you speak to people from India is different from the way you speak with people from Germany or United States. Germany, United States, you guys appreciate being direct much more than Latin America or India or even China and Japan. So this was a struggle for me, not because being direct is difficult, it's my style, but balancing between the two, depending on who I was interacting with, what kind of executive, what kind of people on my team. So I had to learn to balance that. This was the most interesting part. So when I moved, in fact, it was easier for me because everybody around me was like the same. So it was easier. From a process perspective, I think one thing that caught my attention is that Brazilians, specifically Brazilians, more than the rest of Latin America, we are very creative and flexible. We never say no because we will figure out a way to do something, to work around things. This is not how people operate here. This is the famous, this is not my job phrase. It's real here. It's not because people are lazy. It's because they have very well-defined boundaries and they don't want to mess up things. So they will not invade spaces or create alternative solutions like we do in Brazil. It's very common in Brazil that we find creative ways. So if you do it following the processes and not doing anything illegal or wrong, this is well perceived too. So this is an advantage that I see in Brazil. Something else that I find very interesting is how much the executives in Brazil, they are extremely concerned and detail oriented about costs. I say this is because we are poor, so we care more about costs. But I had executives in Brazil calling me because of $20 charges. Like, why are you charging me $20 for that? And here in the US, it never happened. Like, they trust that you're doing your job. They do not look into so many details. So financially speaking, I think Brazilians are extremely smart. We do that very well because of scarce resources. So it's part of our culture. This was the difference. And as I mentioned to you guys before we joined here together, I really miss having lunch with people. In Brazil, we have this break to have lunch, to talk about life and about soccer or family. And we don't do that here in the US, most of the companies. And I really miss it. That would be it.
Great. Well, very interesting. I can see my own experience in what you've said, and I think culture you pick up over time when you spend time somewhere, and sometimes you kick yourself because it's difficult to adapt to a new culture. But the other point is that you can get very used to the place that you're in, and then some of the directness that you talked about, you learn how to adapt and learn how to have some of the warmth that you get through lunches and through human interaction that sometimes you don't have. So I've seen that from both sides. A question for you then about the technical skills, the soft skills, and the relationships, because I know you've spent a lot of time in business relationships in IT. Which of those helps you successfully do an international move? What do you attribute your success doing an international and a career move to, and why?
I think in my job specifically, the technical skills, they were less important because I am a generalist. So I am not specifically focused on any technology. So I know the end-to-end. Because this is my job, I need to know the end-to-end. So from infrastructure to ERP deployment or Industry 4.0, I have to know a little bit of everything. And I have to know enough to make educated guesses or analyze a little bit more in depth, count with on other people to help the business to take decisions about investments, build a business case, for example. So at the executive level, I would say I'm a generalist. So I believe that what helped me the most were my soft skills and the relationship skills that I would put together with the soft skills. So being able to understand quickly a business, what they need, what their pain points, how this connects back to technology. So the ability to deal with the ambiguity is very important because you do not know all the details before you start making some guesses or even building a business case. So remember that at this level, when we are talking about the strategic level, you have to make some assumptions. You have to be okay with the ambiguity and be very good at managing risks. So I would say from a technical perspective, managing risks is very important. So the ability to do that, but listen to people, understand what they need, go to the core of the questions instead of just letting your business drive you to a solution. This is very dangerous. So if I could give a IT person that needs to work together with businesses an advice, would be to learn to ask the right questions and do not let people's assumptions about technology to influence the business case, because people read magazines and they think they understand technology and they do not. So you need to be careful, ask the right questions, drive the conversation to turn the conversation into something measurable. This is also a very important skill, being able to transform whatever you learn and the business case you have into something measurable, so you can set up a baseline and then measure afterwards to show your success as an IT person.
Super. Now here's a bit of a change. Social media is filled with these wonderful, perfect lives. You know, you mentioned wanting to eat at some place other than your desk, but if you go to social media, you'll see perfect everything, right? It appears that there's, in some cases, that there's, just everything works perfectly well. But in real life, in my experience, that is definitely not the case. And it's challenging to share professional setbacks or to share personal difficulties, especially in public. But I'm hoping that you'd be willing just to share some of the challenges over the course of your career and how you ended up working through a setback, you know, how you hit a wall and what did you do about it? And you know, sometimes it can be, I had a problem and never solved it. And that was just a pain point and I became a stronger person, but I never fixed it. And there are other ones that you learn and you get through. So if you could pick at least one, if you had one of each, that would be great.
I have one of each. I will try to be fast because I could give a 1 hour speaking time for just the one that was, it really sucked. I had a WMS, a warehouse management system deployment in one of my plants. That was a complete disaster. We stopped production and shipping for 1 week. Okay. So I cannot tell you enough how horrible that is. So you were losing revenue because the system doesn't work. And why the system didn't work? Because we took too many risks. The people from the front line, the people on the floor, they were not engaged enough. And we just move it forward with the system deployment, thinking that we could work through that or work around that, and we couldn't. So we had to fix some things in a hurry. So we worked it like 24/7 for almost a week in turns to get it solved. It was a disaster. I got yelled at by the president of the business like every day. And in the end, that when we fixed everything went to normal. He told me, even if this project was a disaster, I lost a lot of money because of this project. And I am sure you know this is going to reflect on your performance review. And I was like, yes, thank you for that I still have a job. And he told me, but you know what? Your attitude when the problem happened made all the difference. So you never pushed back on your accountability. You pulled all the right resources to make it work. You gave me updates all day long at any time of the day. So your behavior during the crisis was exceptional. And I really would like to recognize you for that. And this is the time when you show that you are committed, that you're smart, that you have the right relationships, and you know what to do in a crisis. So it was horrible, but at the same time, I got very good feedback about my team behavior and my behavior, and I learned a lot of lessons. So we had a very good lessons learned in the end of the project. So we learned a lot, and we never made the same mistakes again. So I think that if you get yourself in a situation that everything is bad, remember that your behavior will set the tone from the crisis moment until the end, and people will remember that you owned it and you made it work. Okay. The other one that I thought about that it's really bad, but there is no way around it, is when you have to downsize, when you have to let people go. This is very common in the industry. I've gone through that several times. The last time was 2016. We reduced in the region, my region, 20% of the people. I had to spend a full day making phone calls for people. We're talking to them about letting them go, and they were great people. The only reason they were going is because the company was cutting costs, which happens. So there's no way around it. It's just bad, and it's part of the job. And you have to just try to remember that you were doing your job and things will get better eventually.
Yeah, thank you. And on your first point, I think we all as people have experienced problems where somebody clearly made a mistake and they don't own it. They don't take responsibility for it. And theoretically, it's very easy to say, I'm sorry. In practice, it's very difficult to say, I'm sorry in a honest way. So people do not forget that. And as you pointed out with the warehouse, it's insufficient just to say sorry. What you do and how committed you are will not be forgotten. So those I think are great examples. People are challenging. Technology is incredibly complicated. I'm a user of technology, not a technology whiz, but as complicated as technology can be, I believe people are more complex. So I'm curious if you could just describe within the context of enterprise technology and what you do, an implementation process that required the most of you, not in terms of technology, but in terms of team management, people management. How did you manage up? How did you manage laterally across? And how did you manage with people on your team that reported to you?
About this one, I think the most challenging environments or scenarios that I have encountered in the last 15 years is mergers and acquisitions and divestitures. So Eaton does that very frequently. So I went through that 3 times in 15 years, some of them extremely large. So these, for the people that are not familiar with that, what we do is you buy a company and you integrate this company into your own systems and processes and your organizational structure. Divestitures is the opposite. When you sell part of the company to somebody else, so you have to separate. It's a separation process that includes technology and people. That's, I think, is the most challenging one, Jason, because technology-wise, the problems are very similar. So adoption of a new process, fear of a new way of doing things, being scared about your job that you may let be go, they will let you go. But mergers and acquisitions is even worse because you are landing as the acquired company, you are landing in a company that has a different culture than your original company. And normally one absorbs the other. It's not really a merge. You just, forget about some things and start doing new things instead. So this is the most challenging I have encountered. And the best way to deal with that, and I will say that for any IT person or any business person out there, one of the most important trainings and knowledges you can have is on organizational change management. There is a technique that is called ADKAR. You can Google it. It's very nice, ADKAR. It's about learning how to influence people and deal with the change that everybody goes through, issues or resistance during the change. So how to deal with that? This is the best way I found to deal with that. So understand people's desires, fears, needs, even at the basic level. If people are afraid of losing their jobs, you have to find a way to soothe them and to let them know that this is not the point. When you are acquiring or getting somebody new in your team, the point is we need to be a new team with new people. We may need to change processes for implementations. For example, this is the same issue. How do you convince people that, like you say here in the US, that I love it, what's in it for me? You have to convince people what's in it for them, and so you can do your job. It's far from being just technical. And when you forget the people part of the technology deployment, I am sure things will go wrong, always. I've never seen one single IT project that was purely technical that went well. No, never. It always goes wrong. And what happens is you keep fixing things after the system is in place, which is horrible. So you have to work double. So I would recommend everybody to learn about this for any type of deployment, even, and of course, for very big and complex ones like mergers and acquisitions. Learn about organizational change management. Learn about how to listen to people and address their fears and concerns. I hope it makes sense.
Maravilha, muito obrigado, Ivanise, foi ótimo. Agora, eu acho que assim, estou trocando.
Great, thank you. I'm switching to Portuguese. And I think it's important to do that. It's very important to have this equality. You talked about that in a different way, but when you want to have an international relationship, you need to be exposed. It could be in your language, in your culture. You need to adapt to a new technology or a new culture, and that's not easy. And just like what you said, when you have a problem, how do you react is very important. So I'd like to thank you because you agreed to uh, address this first session in English, and now
Jason,
speak
você me
Portuguese.
permite um
And Jason,
comentário em
let me
3
allow you,
segundos? Falar
if
inglês
you allow me
fez
to say something,
completa
speak English
diferença na minha
made a
vida
huge
profissional. Então, eu
difference
só estou
in
aqui
my
hoje
professional
porque também
career.
falo
I'm only
inglês e
here
me
today
dedico ao
because I speak
idioma, gosto
English,
muito de
I
falar inglês.
dedicate
Então,
to
falar
this
inglês é
language, I
fundamental.
like to speak English. Speak English is crucial. Very good. To our inter students, we have a very interesting course, which is a collaborative course with half of the students from Canada, half of the students from Inter Brazil, and you have the course is going to be in English. So this immersion and this effort is very important. Now, Luis Manji, it's a pleasure to have you here with us today. Manji is the Vice President of the CIO Research Group, which is um, the applied group who do advisory for CIOs. He has more than 35 years of experience in IT and research. The research that he does, that he leads, is focused in results. Uh, uh, Cross initiatives, IT strategies, cost optimization. He's a professional with broad experiences. He has focused in business solutions and innovation when he was at Itaú BBA, and he studied computer science. So this mix of knowledge comes from technology and business knowledge, and that's very important. Welcome, Manji. If you could uh, allow us to know a little bit more about your professional and personal journey, who you are and what you do, that would be great. Thank you, Jason, for the invitation. I'm trying to summarize 35 years of experience. I have a lot of years on my back. So I've been a developer, just like Ivanizi. I studied data processing. It was a very common course at that time. Then I migrated into marketing. Even those who study technology, it's very good uh, to to go around other fields of knowledge. I did my master's degrees business administration at FGV in Rio. Then I did a postgraduate and bachelor in philosophy. And because of this, the because I work in administrative in multinational companies, like I started in technology as a developer in system developing, then I went to marketing in a bank. I worked for Citibank for many years. I was a marketing product manager. Then I went to a regional department. I, distribution channels, internet was just started to come to life. I started implementing regional programs in terms of Latin America, home banking. You're very young, so you don't remember what home banking was. We would do we used to install a floppy disk that we sent to our clients. Then I came back to technology and I started my executive career in IT. I was the CIO in many companies, multinationals, North American, the British and Canadian companies in different regions, uh, different background, different management style. And that was very important to my career. And now I'm at Gartner Group. I've been here for 11 years when the advisory started. It's research and CIO advisory. We discuss many topics. It's a broad field of work, methodology, so on and so forth. And I have the opportunity to navigate in different clients, different places in the world, different sectors, and different topics. So it's very interesting. Thank you so much. That's awesome. I think it's very interesting, this combination of your previous experience before getting into Gardner as doing research, because you suffer and you gain experience, just like Ivani said. Uh, the plan for that's very important, but the broadness that you acquire by talking to different clients from different sectors and segments has a huge value. My next question has to do with the pandemic and what we are taking as the outcome of this experience. What were the changes in terms of enterprise tech in the past few years, especially during the pandemic, that led to so many changes? What has changed? What's coming back, and what has changed and won't come back? Innovation that was created by the pandemic. Well, let's start with the work. The work's never going to be the same again. Many companies, even though technology was relatively used to remote work, we incorporated that in many positions, many companies, but it wasn't openly practiced in different areas, in different companies. Now, after, well, because of the need that people had to move to home office, work's never going to be the same again. We have a lot of hybrid work. Of course, there are differences depending on the sector, the country, some issues that are kind of weird. Some technology companies are trying to force their workers to go back to the office. Now we have different shades of gray because the work's gonna change. Let me give you a practical example. I have many clients who I work with in Brazil, they're losing talent in very high technical levels because they are receiving proposals to work in the US and making he used to those who used to be a technician here, and they now have a huge salary. They like their salaries are now like fivefold higher, because what I'm trying to say is huge demand for some professionals. Exchange rate is not good for us. Work's not going to be the same again. Now, another thing that has changed it radically, and it's also obvious, digital transformation accelerated during the pandemic. So I mean, because of survival, we couldn't have in-person work, so companies had to learn how to work. E-commerce like went crazy during the pandemic. Even those who didn't have any presence in e-commerce, they had to change their priorities. So we have a huge digital transformation during the pandemic, but and that stayed. Business model had changes throughout this time. Now we have a new landscape for this sort of digital transformation, and that put pressure in the labor market because these initiatives have accelerated, volume has mm, changed, and that created a large demand in the labor market as well. So now it's a very important issue to discuss. I think those are the main, most important changes in the post-pandemic times. Perfectly. How do you segment enterprise stack markets? Well, we work with two different segments, what we call HTTP, technology providers, technology service providers, and on the other hand, those who consume technology. And among within these two large division, we have from one side the technology providers, and on the other side the users. how we're gonna break up the segmentation, and on the end user side, we divide by roles, like CIO, software engineers, and so on and so forth, the different roles that you have in technology department, the technology area, from the most operational one to the mid-level leadership and higher executives. Perfectly. Now you work with an international team. Could you talk about which countries you work with? What is the percentage of people you work with from different regions? What are the main differences by region that you highlight? Well, because of the time difference, my team of advisors, CIO, it's global. So we have people in Brazil, in the US, in Europe, Middle East, Asia, Japan, global presence. Of course, because of the different time, I have more interaction with US, Canada, and Mexico. That's where I concentrate my work. And the difference in this small part of the planet is the level of maturity, basically. There's a larger amount of companies with a higher level of maturity in some management practices, especially in terms of technology. They are, we like to say in Portuguese, productivized. I mean, uh, they are leaving this silo function now, and they start to have already started working in value chain, more verticalized, working together. Companies in the US and Canada are more advanced in terms of Brazil, but this gap used to be larger. I think that today we have companies with a reasonable amount in terms of the percentage that you see in Canada and the US, but a large amount of companies that are with the same level of maturity. Throughout the past year, what were the most important questions that you've received from the main CIOs you've talked to? And what were your advice? Oh my goodness. I will try to be brief, but that's a difficult question. Okay, most recent uh, clients. People are now desperate in terms of retention, talent retention. By far, that's the most important topic. That's the hot topic, not only with me, but with our advisors. It's not a Brazil privilege because of the issues we've talked about earlier. This new labor market that you can work virtually for any company in the world, these barriers have been broken during the pandemic. So I have many questions being asked. How can I sell my company to people? Um, and that go through many levels of discussion. Has to do with my advisory, review your value purpose for the technology professional, value proposition. It's the same concept that you use in marketing applied to the employee. How do I create a value proposition that's not limited to benefits and compensation? It goes beyond that. All the things related to career development, work environment, leadership style, values. And it's something that Lenise talked about diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's very important. It's a very important topic to attract people and maintain people. This is the most important topic. Then is the transformation of the IT operational model. That's how we deliver technology today, or how we build technology. More and more, this construction is together with the business and is led by the business department, and it breaks up with the traditional model. um, which is a very compartmentalized model. And that creates a lot of questions in the CIO's mind. How do I orchestrate all that? How do I govern that? How can I guarantee that I'm not wasting money? And my second point is it has to do with cultural change because of this new environment of the hybrid work, um, radical flexibility. And there's a question in terms of change, culture change. How do we change culture? And there's a very interesting line on the of research that has to do with demystifying this idea of cultural change in the sense that culture can be manifested through habits. You need to change habits. You have to change culture, and you cannot do it from top down. You have to do it in a more organic way. So I think those are the most important topics, and the, what I could tell my clients about, what I can tell my clients. So Deborah Saldanha, thank you so much for your participation. Deborah is the leader in innovation for soccer club Atlético Mineiro. I don't know anything about soccer, but I'm really happy that she found some time to talk to us in the verge of starting the World Cup. She promotes a culture of innovation and partnerships, which is a topic that we've been hearing all over, which is very important. She has a background in sport marketing, sports management, so she's a great person, not only to talk about the reality within her organization as a soccer professional, but in other issues about marketing, interaction, and yeah, same question, who are you and what do you actually do? Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation to be here talking to you today. But well, first of all, today I'm the innovation manager at Atlético Mineiro Soccer Club. It's a little bit different from my colleagues. I used to be a soccer athlete in the past. Soccer has been my life since I remember, since I know myself. But I went through the communication markets. Uh, I studied marketing and public relationships. I did my MBA and digital sports, sports marketing, and then I got into technology. That's why I work with innovation. I've worked more in the market side in large companies, Unimed, Avis, Rent-A-Car, among others, large corporation, more focused in marketing.
Comunidades do Google lá em Curitiba, eu sou de Curitiba, né? Então,
since 2016, I've been participating in communities. I'm from Curitiba, and it's one of the largest communities in the world to foster this technology business. And it was great. So I started getting into this innovation and methodology world and understanding, and I fell in love with this, with all this. So that's when I started to change and start thinking about digital business and how can I bring this to soccer? I've always had soccer in the back of my mind for my career. I did some social work, playing. I kept playing as a hobby and always learning and studying because that's a passion for management and soccer as a whole. After I finished my postgraduate degree in sports marketing, I started opening new doors and opening my mind for that. I started to prepare other projects, knocking at some club doors and bringing technology that maybe today you're thinking about innovation as something that is a trend, but it's not a culture that you have in terms of soccer in Brazil. I'm talking about Brazil, of course, especially in 2016. So I started bringing some of my first projects. If you think about that today, didn't seem so relevant. I went to Curitiba, the first club that implemented a chat box in its website. It was the first project that I took to a soccer club. Nobody had it. And I said, wow, that's just awesome. We need to do that.
Fechar contrato para isso, então, para ver como era, né? Recente, 2016, se pensar
And
nisso.
we managed to do so, to close a contract. And that's recent, 2016.
Até que eu comecei a
And I
trabalhar
started with these projects in different clubs, and I started working with startups. When I went deep into innovation, another technology project, and in sports startups, sports tech. Together with that, in parallel, I worked with some clubs. I worked with a sport tech as a consultant, and to Paraná, state of Paraná club, it was called Londrina Sports Club. And in 2019, I started teaching and talking about that, speaking about that. And then I met the Grêmio Club CEO, and then I told him about some of those crazy projects. Open innovation for Grêmio. Let's innovate our soccer clubs. And he liked the idea. And he said, okay, it's time to start doing that. At that time, 2019, the only club that had it was Atlético Paranaense, which is a reference in Brazil, who started this project.
Em 2020 foi quando eu mandei, né, teve toda a questão
And
da
in
pandemia.
2020, with the pandemic,
Eu fui trabalhar no Grêmio, então ano passado
in 2020, went to work for Grêmio, for the Grêmio Club. Last year, I was doing some work that I really clashed in terms of innovation culture, and I ended up coming to Atlético Mineiro. So I came here to the city of Belo Horizonte. I've been here since January as an innovation manager, trying to bring more of the innovation culture. Thinking about bringing technology and tools, it may sound easy, but innovation culture is the most important thing that you need to work in terms of sports and so on. Awesome. In the past year, congratulations for your new talent challenge. Throughout this past year, your first year there, what's the sort of innovation you've been working with, trying to implement in the culture? Well, last year, we already had an innovation manager who was working pretty well in some points. And I think he started the most important work. That was the club who started Web3 projects. And I think it was a point to turn the key and bring this innovation culture to the club. It's not because I'm here, but this club already had the mindset to receive innovation, to test, especially in soccer, which is an environment that you cannot make mistakes. During the game, you cannot make mistakes, and that can be a problem to management. So innovation culture can be a problem. So when I got here with this mentality, try new things, that made a difference. And then, since I started here, thinking about, well, thinking on the long run, which is something else that in soccer we don't have. Those who follow soccer might know that.
Essa barreira do imediatismo e pensar a longo prazo. Então, desses projetos que foram feitos no passado, em que o Atlético Mineiro foi
to break this barrier. And thinking about the project that we did last year, we had to close partnership with large companies, Fund Token, who they're not, of crypto games. Atlético Mineiro was the first to do that in Brazil. So I just follow up with this project, thinking about what we call the Galloverse. Gallo is the mascot of our team. So in bring and how we can connect multiverse with real world who Web3 and so on and so forth. So that's a larger project we been progressing and been working on. So thank you. Well, I think that some people embrace change and innovation and those who don't. Some people might like in the beginning and then don't like it later on after the implementation of the deployment. So from your career, have you experienced a situation where you had people who were more resistant and who were open? How did you deal with that? Well, I think we are always going to face this sort of resistance. People are afraid of testing and making mistakes. So I think soccer has more than anything. It's not about testing, it's about thinking that resistance is going to be there in any case. When you talk about innovation, you know that you need to break the resistance barrier. How do we deal with that? We're always thinking, the idea is to balance opportunity, risk, value, and strategy, and generate value based on that. So when you think about sports, when you think about bringing together all that risk, those who follow blockchain and cryptocurrency, you guys know that we are living in very nice here. So to break the resistance, I like to talking about risk and visibility. How can I generate value for the club, for our partners, and how can I think strategy so that I can bring together business area, communications, soccer, athletes, how this is going to have an impact in our club. Not only think about revenues. Of course, we need to think about revenues, so new revenues, but not only that. And that's the point. It's thinking about how to design this roadmap and all and break this resistance. We're gonna do this with a very good foundation based in data, and I think that's a very important point. Great. Now, final question that's already from the audience, and then you're gonna go to the round table, have a specific question to Luis, but the questions that you have to add, please feel free. But this question comes from Michelle Yamashiro, and she says, Deborah, you found some difficulties in working in the area because soccer is more male universe. Well, in the beginning, yes, especially when I didn't work in any club, I didn't have an experience. I had market experience from large companies, but not in soccer. So in the beginning, I had to prove myself. I had to prove that I understood soccer. I used to have, well, to work in a club, you need to prove yourself. Being a woman, you have to prove twice. But later on, it was very clear to me that this was a well-designed project, that I had this opportunity, risk was minimum, and I always had that in mind in my professional process, especially in soccer, because I understood the market, what were the paradigms, what were the resistance. I knew how to get it. I had a design, a plan in my mind. So that made my acceptance easier. So, okay, I have this opportunity. We can reach this revenue. These are the risks, but we can go around it with such and such tool. So I think this was the most important thing that I did. And right now, I don't suffer any like issues for being a woman. Luis Manjo, next questions for you, Irineu Silva. He asks, when the CEO asks you how to retain talent, in your opinion, oh, if this question, if the CEO thinks, okay, when do I can retain talent, is that question too late to be answered? Very good question. And I think I'll try to be very direct. Most of the times, the problem is already that when they start coming up with this question, is that he's already feeling that people are leaving. Even though some are started talking about that, anticipating problems that might come up in the future, because he knows what's happening with his peers and he doesn't want to go through the same problem. But I agree with you. Most of the times, that's already happening. People are already leaving the company. The question of what the sort of advice I can do goes through change their value proposal. That has to do with multiple attributes, value proposition, not only compensation, benefits. It has to do with leadership. How is the company leadership? It has to do with the values of the company, possibility to career development and other aspects. Very good. Now I'm going to switch to English because I have a question in English from Tatiana Almeida.
What should companies do to make the process of feedback more easy to be accepted by the one who is receiving it? Ivanise, why don't we put you on the spot? Pode ir, vai você. Fica à vontade, você pode responder em português. Aí acho que você atinge mais gente.
Tá bom. Eu adoro essa pergunta. Eu acho que tem algumas coisas que precisam acontecer. Em primeiro lugar, a gente precisa treinar quem dá o feedback para saber fazer isso de uma forma construtiva, porque às vezes as pessoas não dão feedback, né? Elas fazem críticas ou elas dão conselho. Feedback não é crítica nem conselho. Feedback tem que pensar no futuro, né? É o que você espera que vai acontecer no futuro. Como você corrige alguma questão que foi problemática. Então, só estruturando isso, eu acho que já muda muito o jogo, porque aí você não vai falar, nossa, você chega atrasado todo dia, esses feedbacks que, na verdade, são críticas, né? São feedbacks estruturados, baseados em alguma coisa concreta e que a pessoa tem ação para tomar. E eu acho que o segundo ponto, que é o mais difícil, é entender que o feedback também só vai funcionar bem, ou ele vai funcionar melhor quando existe confiança. E criar essa confiança, estruturar uma forma de você criar um ambiente de confiança é muito importante. Então, é uma questão cultural. Eu acho que tem técnicas que podem ser usadas para isso, mas precisa treinar quem dá o feedback e também precisa treinar quem recebe, para que isso seja uma relação construtiva.
Very good. I'm going to ask a question that kind of joins many questions. So we like to be very punctual. We have a great, for me, it's a great sign when we had such great talents that we have so many questions, but I think it's better to end with people wanting more than staying longer. So question is from Marcelo Ferreira dos Santos, and the question is, well, his question has to do with the metaverse future, and if that can have an impact in business models and work. So it's technology in work in the future. There was another question about remote work and how it's going to be the future for that. So you can give us our final comment. Let's take the other way around. So we're going to start with Débora, then Ivanise, and finally Manji, to mix and match who you spoke, the order of those speaking. I think in soccer, work in metaverse is going to take a while because you're just starting to offer metaverse for a fan experience, just the beginning. We're still learning if it's worthwhile, if there is an audience for that. We're still discussing that. So we are still very far away, but we are already designing that, how metaverse is going to be. But getting to work, getting our workers there, I think it's going to be at a second stage. I'm talking about soccer. It's not for the market as a whole, okay? I'm just talking as a club employee. I'm going to allow Luis to go over. Let's see what he has to say. Okay, Ivanise, you, and then
Tá
Manji.
bom, eu também estou esperando o Manji, porque eu estou
I'm still
curiosa.
waiting for
Mas
Manji
eu
to
diria o
find out.
seguinte, a minha
But
experiência,
I
mesmo
would
sendo
say
uma
that
pessoa
my
de TI,
experience,
eu acho,
being someone
vamos ver o
from
que ele vai
IT,
falar, mas eu acho
let's see what he has to
que
say.
essa história
I think that
da
this
integração do metaverso
sort
com o
of
mundo
metaverse
profissional,
integration
ele deve
in the professional
começar com
world
a
should
parte
start
soft, que é a
with
interação das
the
pessoas, a colaboração
soft
onde
part,
for possível,
integrating
porque o que eu
people
percebo hoje é que
where
a
we can have some
tecnologia,
sort of collaboration, because
ela já
as
está
far as
num
I
nível
understand,
diferente
technology is
quando
already
você
at a
pensa em
different
pessoas
level when you
administrativas e o
think
povo
about
no chão de fábrica.
administrative people
Isso é uma
and
questão
those
muito
working
importante, porque o que acontece é que o
at the plant
nível de uso de
floor.
tecnologia
So
de
the
pessoas que
level of
trabalham numa
technology
mesa com
used for those
computador
working
já é
on a desk
completamente
with a
diferente da experiência de uma pessoa que está
computer
lá na
is different from
operação,
those
que trabalha
working
montando coisas, botando
in
coisas em
operations,
caixas e botando
like
caixas em
assembling things or
caminhões.
putting
Então, eu acho que antes de
boxes in
pensar em
trucks. So
metaverso, a gente pode
before
até
thinking
entrar
about
nesse mundo,
metaverse, we can
mas
get
ainda
into
vai
this
ser muito
world, but
elitizado, eu vou
it's
chamar
going to
assim, para pessoas
be
que realmente estão preparadas para isso e
only for
que têm
people who are
condições de fazer
actually
isso, porque a
prepared
tecnologia
for
nem
that
chegou lá no chão de
and has the
fábrica ainda. Na
condition to do so.
realidade, é muito
Technology is
difícil
not
achar,
at
mesmo
the
empresas
forefront
super
yet.
ricas
Even
ainda
very
têm
rich companies, they
assim
still
bolsões de
have
coisas muito
some
tecnologicamente
silos
avançadas no chão de
of
fábrica. Isso geralmente não chega nas pessoas, né?
advanced
São poucas
technology.
pessoas que têm isso.
But
Então,
it doesn't
a
get
minha
to the
expectativa é
people,
isso,
so my
é mais para
expectation is exactly
relacionamento
that, waiting
corporativo,
for
para pessoas
corporate
ainda no mundo
relationship,
administrativo, ainda estou
those
para
in
ver o
the
que vai acontecer no chão de fábrica.
administrative work. I'm still waiting to see what's going to happen at the plant floor. Okay, closing. Well, metaverse. Metaverse is a technology trend. We published the 10 technologic trends for the year 2023 is metaverse, one of them. Gartner defines metaverse. Metaverse is something very specific, is bringing together physic reality and digital reality, but it goes to three large goals. It transfers you to a specific place. It also transforms. You have some technologies that augment the reality and also the financial part of transactions like money. And those three pillars has already been solved technologically speaking. The corporate world, we have many things going on in metaverse. But of course, in the past, when we started with mobility, smartphone technology, broadband, and this massification of broadband, of course, it's going to take some time for the massified market. But I think that there are many companies already working in metaverse. There's no one single player of metaverse. Metaverse is a reality for the gaming sector. for gaming, you already have all these three dimensions to transform, transport, and transaction. There are some games not as popular as what our teenage sons, kids play, but like transaction, money going on, it's already a reality in the gaming world. Just to remind you, the gaming industry uh, makes more money than many other sectors or many sectors in the world. It makes a lot of money. We found it difficult to understand because we are from a different generation. You are younger than me, but I wasn't raised in a video game world, but those who play in there since they're kids and they're totally used to metaverse. They leave the work, they're already in the labor market, and for them it's a lot more natural, more more organic, the metaverse for the corporate, but then it is to us. So I need to keep that in mind. Metaverse is already happening. Just to give you some examples, a certain company didn't onboard in Asia through metaverse. Onboarding happened in metaverse. Many events are already there. We have the Galoverso that you mentioned, Deborah. We have many retail brands with their own metaverse. And that's why Gardner added this as a technological trend. All these trends are something that are already happening. We see them happening. We see an, an accelerated curve, technologies that are going to be mainstream. That's our list. So thank you so much for the three of you for your participation. It's an honor to have you all with us today. And I'm going to close just to say something that I find very important. When you make mistake, you have to take responsibility. But when you ask something, it's always good to think about what you can offer when you take the different, the other way around, right? So thank you so much for your team, the Inter team, and you're going to have a next events token business in 2023, in the beginning of the year. So I wish you all uh, a lot of success playing soccer during the World Cup and see you in 2023. Bye bye.